Now, if you study a well-made banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 ridges. On the close side, 2 ridges. If you get your hand ready to grip a banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 grooves, on the close side 2 grooves. The banana and the hand are perfectly made one for the other. You'll find the maker of the banana, Almighty God, has made it with a non-slip surface. It has outward indicators of inward contents: green, too early; yellow, just right; black, too late. Now, if you go to the top of the banana, you'll find, as with the soda can makers, they placed a tab at the top. So God has placed a tab at the top. When you pull the tab, the contents don't squirt in your face. You'll find the wrapper, which is biodegradable, has perforations. Notice how gracefully it sits over the human hand. Notice it has a point at the top for ease of entry. It's just the right shape for the human mouth. It's chewy, easy to digest, and it's even curved toward the face to make the whole process so much easier. Seriously, Kirk, the whole of creation testifies to the genius of God's creative power. It absolutely...
New Zealander creationist, activist, and renowned botanist/logician Ray Comfort claimed that bananas disproved evolution, as they are so perfect for human consumption due to their very tiny seeds, portability, and protective peel. And that means that they were indeed created by the Lord Almighty. Truly, only a loving God could have created this magnificent fruit. Except that in the wild they look like this. Yeah, it doesn't look quite as tasty. This genus, Musa, originates from the obscure island of New Guinea, split between Indonesia and Papua New Guinea today. The wildlife and foliage in this part of the world is incredibly biodiverse and rather different from those in the Asian mainland. These first inhabitants, as far as humans were concerned, were dark-skinned Melanesians. The Papuans of various tribes would eventually be taken over by the Austronesians from the mainland of Asia. They had more advanced technology and would take up banana cultivation, spreading it across a series of island chains in what are now Indonesia, the Philippines, and many other places, as well as the mainland. This separation by waterways produced distinct cultivars of bananas. They would spread eventually to the Indian subcontinent, most likely through trade, long before Indo-Europeans arrived with the advent of Hinduism and the caste system. That's how old they are. Through trade routes, bananas would spread to other tropical and subtropical environments in sub-Saharan Africa, becoming a common staple to the point that many people misattribute their origin to Africa. By the Middle Ages, the Arabs had spread into the Indian subcontinent, and spread as far west as to what is now Spain, growing bananas there. Granted, the climate was far drier. However, after kicking the Muslims out of the Iberian Peninsula, the Spanish and Portuguese began to embark on the exploration of the Americas. And it just so happened to be that the Caribbean, Central America, and the northern half of South America were quite wet and warm. The Spanish had also taken over banana cultivars from their new colony in the Philippines and grew those bananas and took them from the Philippines to Central America. Now, life on the plantations under Spanish and Portuguese rule was not pleasant, but it never went to the same extent of barbarism that we saw with sugar, tobacco, and cotton. Eventually, Mexico and various other nations in Latin America would win their wars of independence from Spain. However, the aristocratic system of peasants toiling on the plantation still remained, many of whom were indigenous or mixed. Central America would break off from Mexico and eventually break off into various nation-states that exist to this day, like El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. With the exception of Costa Rica, a system of exploitation put in place by the Spanish would be adopted by the native elites, and who use this to an extent to this day, creating great profits for themselves and great hardship for the vast underclass. Hence the term Banana Republic was born, with a ruling class uninterested in investing in education, industry, or infrastructure as they are already very wealthy. An agroeconomy based off of the export of bananas and other tropical fruit grew, and became their main economic source of productivity. Before the late 1800s, most people in cooler, temperate climates probably never even heard of bananas before, but soon they would become one of the most iconic food items in the modern world. By the early 20th century, American corporations, namely the United Fruit Company, now known as Chiquita, had bought up land in numerous Central American nations. Bananas, however, have their problems. They have a short shelf life and need to be transported to temperate climates under a short period of time before they spoil. For that reason, it pretty much was quite difficult to turn this exotic luxury fruit into a staple crop that could be very cheap. And this was done through the use of cheap labor. This was great for banana consumers, and great for the corporations that made billions. It was great for the Latin American elites who got to consolidate their power, but it was terrible for the workers. When governments emerged in Guatemala and El Salvador that tried to institute land reforms, U.S. intelligence services, along with the militaries of those nations, pretty much orchestrated coups which resulted in military dictatorships which brutalized the peasants' population. Banana at this point in time was cultivated in various disparate forms depending on the geographic location, the most famous of which was the Gros Michel. This banana is more rigid than the ones we use today, but still is more portable and high in calories as far as fruit go. However, the Panama disease, caused by numerous fungi, swept through the crops, killing the Gros Michel. The reason for this is that bananas are oftentimes grown in monocultures with near identical genetic copies of each other that make cultivation very consistent and efficient, but on the other hand, lack enough genetic diversity, which makes them susceptible to mutating pathogens. The Gros Michel was replaced with the Cavendish banana, which is the main cultivar today. If you've ever wondered why artificial flavorings of bananas oftentimes taste weird, it's because they're oftentimes meant to mimic the previous major cultivar banana rather than the modern-day Cavendish banana. However, the Cavendish is facing numerous biological threats, and it's likely that your great-grandchildren will never get to taste them, as the mutations of the Panama disease are coming back for them this time. Going back to our friend and philosopher Ray Comfort. The man was partially right. Bananas are products of intelligent design. That intelligence being humans, who first cultivated this fruit, spread it across distant lands and waters, grew it in a variety of ways, and then turned them into a multi-continental commercial and culinary empire. And one that you can take part in for less than $1.